Cubs continue to punch the market looking for the next front-end starting pitcher. How would you feel about, instead of a free agent, making a trade for a guy like Edward Cabrera? Would he be the guy to satisfy this rotation? His name continues to pop up. The Cubs have been linked to him in the past. He's someone we're going to talk about. Also, could the Cubs potentially be looking at that young Japanese third baseman who could possibly help them in Okamoto? Or are they not in the mix? Are they seriously stuck on Alex Bregman or Matt Shaw as their backup plan? We'll talk about this right here on the Cubs Baseball channel. Like, subscribe, thumbs up, hit the bell. Thank you guys for being here and being part of the show. And don't forget our AveD right there. QR code for Mick Nation. We give away hats and swag, and we got a big game coming up in college football between Alabama and Indiana. Now, there's a lot of Indiana fans here. I know there's a lot of Alabama fans across the country. We're giving away $250 per quarter for you guys to guess the right score. So let's do that. Let's get this show started. What do you say, everybody? Mick Gillespie. Welcome to the Cubs Baseball channel, and thank you guys for being here. Look, with all the free agent pitchers that are still available and some that aren't anymore, and the guy that we've kind of spent the most time looking at would be Tatsuya Imai, wondering if the Cubs are going to be a player for Imai, who's the guy from Japan that I would say is the biggest free agent pitcher still left on the market, right? But Zach Gallen, remember, he was reportedly going to be a Cub, and then that report turned out to be false. But it was a report that would have had the Cubs signing Gallen, Framber Valdez, another guy that you've heard, Ranger Suarez, who's been so good for the Phillies. Could Jed Hoyer and the front office be looking at a potential trade so that they could spend their money and resources on maybe Alex Bregman? And we kind of talked about the Bregman market right now. It doesn't feel like the Bregman market, and I know we kind of got into this for a touch yesterday, is as rich as he kind of wants it to be. And the Cubs and the Red Sox both seem to be teams that are like, we want him really badly, but we don't want to give this guy 6 or 7 years, right? And that's what he's kind of holding out for. Would the Cubs be okay, and would he be okay with maybe 4 years? And I think you start getting into that area, a shorter-term contract. I think the Cubs or the Red Sox would be okay with that. Maybe you give them more money in less years, right? So if that was the case, right, if the Cubs were like, hey, we're going to spend more of our capital on Alex Bregman, for say, maybe we make a deal for a starting pitcher. And it's hard in this baseball world to get a good starting pitcher in a trade. But the Marlins have won World Series based on trading players and getting young prospects back. Maybe the Cubs have to give up someone like a Jackson Wiggins, and then you get an Edward Cabrera. All right, let's talk about Cabrera. 8-7 record with the Marlins last year, 3.53 ERA. The guy has a bunch of strikeouts, 150 and 137 innings, made 26 starts, dealt with a little bit of an injury, but bounced back. And John Heyman kind of, throwing it out there that maybe the Cubs could be a team that would be interested in a deal to get Cabrera. Now, it doesn't look like the Marlins want to trade Sandy Alcantara, the former Cy Young Award winner, who was battling back from a Tommy John surgery. And then all of a sudden, towards the end of last year, started to get it back again. And there were a ton of rumors that maybe the Cubs and some other teams, the Yankees, were interested in him. They didn't get traded because I'm sure he wasn't going to get what the Marlins thought the market should be for him. Now they're okay keeping the former Cy Young Award winner, right? So they'll listen for Cabrera, according to Barry Jackson. What's that mean, though? Well, it means that they want something good in return if they're going to go and trade one of their stud starters, right? And I'd say Cabrera and Alcantara are right at the top of the rotation. Then you go out and you sign Peter Fairbanks, right, the former Tampa Bay closer. And if you're the Marlins, maybe you feel like you're going to really contend in this this season. And why would you want to trade someone that could help you win games unless you were getting something back in return that you felt like would be very helpful? So the Marlins are going to listen on Cabrera. Cubs are going to have to come correct, as the kids say, if they're going to make a move. Do kids really say that? I don't know, but I thought it'd be funny to say that. Look, the Cubs are going to have to come strong with an offer if they're going to be able to pull a starting pitcher like this. Now, the other thing I look at with Edwin Cabrera is, where would Edward Cabrera end up in this rotation? Like, if you got Cabrera, where would you slot him? Because I'm not putting him ahead of a healthy Justin Steele, and I'm not putting him ahead of Cade Horton, right? Shota Imanaga, when he's doing his thing, when he's kind of dialed in, I put him ahead of Cabrera, or maybe about the same as Cabrera. So maybe like a 3 or a 4. But what I love is that he strengthens your rotation, right? Gives you innings. He's got the potential to be a front-end guy. But I still don't think it's the impact that you would get with a signing of Imai, right? Who I feel like the Cubs are seriously considering here, especially after the success that Yamamoto had with the Dodgers and what he's meant to LA, and then being a World Series MVP, and this kid coming over and all the stuff that he does. I'm sure the Cub scouts have killed it there, looking at this guy, trying to figure out, hey, where does he kind of fit in? Could Zach Gallen really end up being a Cub, right? Even though the report was wrong last time. That's a question to me. Valdez, is he a guy? I mean, you're looking at a market that's kind of going like this. Everybody wants starting pitching. How willing are you to pay for that starting pitching? I think that's one thing. And then also, would you be able to get that with trades instead of free agency? And I think that's kind of the point of this entire thing. But I don't know that Edward Cabrera is someone that I put at the top of a Cubs rotation. I think he'd be more of a middle guy. And I think the Cubs need to get a guy that would be like a 1 or 2. I think you got to have a guy that's pushing Steele or Horton out of that 1-2 spot, just because it makes the rest of the rotation solid. And if you're going to beat the Dodgers, you're going to need that. Now, this guy keeps on popping up, and Kazuma Okamoto is coming to the United States. He is at that point now where if a team's going to sign him, they're going to have to get this done. He's posted, and his posting ends on January the 4th. You know that. It expires. So if a team hasn't signed him in the USA, and he's got Scott Boras as his agent, who knows how to make money, then he goes back to Japan. And you wonder, who are the teams that are considering him? He's a guy who I feel like could potentially be a pretty good power hitter. He's 29 years old, and they say he'd probably take a 2-year deal. He comes in with a ton of pop, a lot of strikeouts. And I think people feel like, he can play third. I think he can play first. That you're just not really sure what the commodity looks like. And according to some of the sources, you're talking about the Angels, the Padres, and the Pirates, right? The Pirates were trying to get Schwarber. They reportedly thought about Alonso, and then this guy may fit their market a little bit better as they try to make a jump this year with all of those young players, right? Padres, they're willing to always seem to go out and make a deal. But the Cubs aren't mentioned in this yet, right? And we know the Cubs want a third baseman, which I could see turning Matt Shaw into a super utility guy. I mean, hey, try to be the best Ben Zrobish you can be if you go and sign a third baseman. But the Cubs seem to be really, really in on this Alex Bregman deal, even though it's probably going to cost them a ton of money to get Bregman. So I don't know. It doesn't feel like there's been really any kind of buzz connecting the Cubs and Okamoto. It doesn't mean Okamoto is not going to be a good player, but it just means that it just doesn't. The Cubs scouts may say, you know what, this guy's really not kind of what we're thinking. We want a little something different, and he doesn't really fit that, right? So anyway, look, that does it for the show today. Just kind of a quick hitter for you guys as I'm on the road. I would not be surprised if the Cubs didn't pull the trigger on a big deal. Remember when they made the Tucker deal last year? You know, you got to go out there and be creative and be hungry. And I think that was one of the things that we looked at last season and talked about it, that sense of urgency. Get that sense of urgency. Go after a big name player and go get them, right? Whether you make a trade or whether you sign them. Man, everybody's chasing the Dodgers right now. So if anybody wants to get a piece of this, they're going to have a pretty good team. So anyway, thank you guys for hanging. Again, don't forget about AveD. We're doing some big things coming up with the Rose Bowl, Indiana against Alabama. I mean, who wouldn't want to watch this game? Indiana having the best season in the history of Hoosiers football. They remind me of Notre Dame, except better because they're number one. And I'll tell you what, they are a solid team. So $250, pick the score per quarter, and then we'll have, obviously at the end of the game score. Doing it at AveD, giving away that. We got Cubs baseball channel hats and other stuff. So thank you guys. And